We live in a business world that celebrates creativity and innovation. We talk about brainstorms and offsites and bringing people together and jam sessions. The problem is, we now have to do that remotely. So what does it take to be more innovative when you're working alone, when you're working by yourself? My name is Rohit Bhargava, and today what we're going to talk about is the non-obvious way. How to be innovative when you're working remote, when you're not with other people. And the first thing I think we have to remember is we're in a time of extreme disruption. I mean, things are changing literally overnight for most of us. And so, sometimes that means we're going to spend a little bit more time entertaining ourselves and streaming some media. But there's a couple of things that have really dramatically shifted in the world. And it's not just over the last couple of weeks. It's actually been longer than that. And so I want to focus on a couple of those. And the first one is that the lines between industries, the things that used to be various different things, are all starting to blur. We're seeing Apple get into financial services, and they have credit cards now. Banks of all sorts, Capital One and many others, have coffee shops and banking services in the same place. You have Crayola creating makeup brands, because makeup's basically painting your face, right? Totally makes sense. Perfect brand extension. You've got Taco Bell opening up a hotel chain, right? And during Halloween last year, Reese's reimagined what we actually needed for Halloween and said, all that candy that you hate when you get on Halloween, stick it in this vending machine and you'll get Reese's, which everyone loves. Totally makes sense for them, because nobody wants Almond Joy, let's be honest, right? The second big thing that's changing is the way we buy. The way we buy pretty much everything, right? We can get mattresses shipped to us in boxes. We can change the retail experience. This is a retail experience I saw in Las Vegas, which is all soaps and sponges, but they look like candy and popsicles and donuts, right? Because we need to reinvent the way that we're buying or even thinking about buying gifts and things like that. You've got produce butchers in various Whole Foods locations around the world trying to chop your fruits and vegetables for you. So now you don't have to do that yourself. In fact, this is adulting right here. You can get a June Intelligent oven, and you put the food in there, and it decides how long to cook it for you. And by the way, in case you're not sure if the food's gone bad or not, you can get the food sniffer device, which will tell you if the food's bad. So all of these things we have really helping us out to manage this future of how we're buying stuff. Even things we used to wait a long time for, now we don't have to wait that long for at all. We can get it right away. We want instant gratification. The things we used to have to do in person, like filling our gas, we don't have to do that on our own anymore either. We just park our car. The services like Filled that'll come drive the fuel truck up to our car and fill it right there while it's parked. That's disruption too. The problem with disruption sometimes, though, is the technology that allows for all of these amazing things and has the potential to connect us sometimes drives us further apart too. And so you see all sorts of crazy things happening in that space as well. You see Budweiser doing the reverse selfie label so that the label looks perfect when you take that selfie and the brand looks perfect. You've got all sorts of really interesting innovations around care avatars like this one that helps elderly people to have more social connection and actually have someone to talk to through these avatars that are staffed by real humans. Now, sometimes it goes even further, like this guy who's dangerously happy with his holographic wife, which is a real product that you can buy now out of Japan. But we're thirsty for connection, right? We're thirsty for connection. This was an art exhibit that was just a focus tube where two people could look at each other with no other distractions at all, because that's what we want, right? A world without those distractions, because the distractions keep us from being able to put all these pieces together. And so all of this change, all of this disruption really has driven a big question for me, something that I've spent a lot of my career focused on, which is, what does it take to think like an innovator? And more importantly today, what does it take to think like an innovator when you're working by yourself? One of the big things that I talk about often is putting unusual ideas together to create something new and different. This is a great example of that, putting these two different fruits together to create something different. And a lot of times what people think and what they spend too much time doing is focused on just their industry. And when you focus on just your industry, you never have the chance to put these different pieces together. So what I want to do is show you the method that I've been teaching to thousands of professionals for how to be what I call a non-obvious thinker. 5 specific mindsets of how to be a non-obvious thinker and how to use them on your own to come up with better ideas, to be more innovative, and to not slow down just because you can't necessarily be in the office as much as maybe you used to be. So let's talk about the first one. First one is be more observant. Be more observant. Pay attention. There's a famous story of the Starbucks founder, Howard Schultz, walking down the street in Milan and seeing all of these different coffee shops and realizing that in Italy there's a third place. Not work, not home, third place. And he thought to himself, we need that in the US. And he brought it back to the US. There's a powerful lesson there. And the lesson is he was just walking down the street and paying attention. Today, what would we be doing? Probably this, getting that last message out. And we don't pay attention. And when we don't pay attention, we miss the chance to see something that we might observe. So one of the biggest things that I try and teach to people is be more observant. Now, what does that look like? What I want to show you with all these visuals that you'll see right next to me is what that process looks like for me, what each one of these habits looks like for me in real life. So here what you see is me kind of going through a bunch of different materials and information. I read a ton of books and I get a lot of books sent to me because every year I do a book awards program. And so I'm lucky because I get to benefit from all of this great thinking. My bookshelf this is just 1/4 of the bookshelf that I've got. So I have way too many books. But I think I can't ever have enough because I'm always consuming new and interesting things. And sometimes they're pretty unusual. I mean, these are a couple of the books that are on my bookshelf with very unusual titles because I'm looking for ideas in unusual places. I'm trying to observe them through books. And when I'm reading books, I'm saving the most interesting ideas. This is what the books look like when I read them and I save the interesting ideas in tabs. Because for me, being observant through books is a great way to try and pay attention to not just what I'm walking past, but also things that I'm reading and things that I'm consuming and things that I'm saving. The second big tip is be curious. Be curious about people who aren't like you. It's really easy today to just read what you see on social media and the stuff that you already probably agree with. It's much more challenging to consume a different viewpoint, to look at something other than what you already know. And so one of my favorite ways to do that for myself and also to tell others to do is to buy magazines that aren't targeted at you. Buy unusual magazines. Because when you do that, you get the chance to step into someone else's world. So for example, I might buy Teen Vogue magazine, which is for teenage girls. There's nothing in there that I typically would be interested in. But when I pick up a magazine like that, or, it's digital now, so when I read a magazine like that, or when I read a magazine like Modern Farmer magazine, for example, I get a chance to step outside of my perspective. I get a chance to see what someone else in the world thinks. And it allows me to believe something that I don't think enough people believe, which is just because someone doesn't think like me doesn't mean they're an idiot. And I think a lot of people don't think that. They look at what other people say, they look at what other people think, and they think, well, if that person doesn't think like me, then they must be missing something. I have to convince them, right? I have to change the way they think. And that's not what curiosity does. Curiosity allows you to see that there's other people in the world, there's different people in the world. Now, when I'm capturing all of these stories and ideas through magazines, through books, I'm often collecting them. And one of the analogies I use is the way I collect ideas is the way that most of us probably collect frequent flyer miles. Because if you think about it, when you go somewhere, you get those frequent flyer miles, and then you save them. And maybe right now you have a little more saved, because you're waiting for that next journey. But when you save them, you use them later when you have enough. And I think if we could do that with ideas, I think if we could save ideas the way we save frequent flyer miles, we could cash them in at the moment when they matter most. And that's something we can do on our own when we're trying to be more innovative and think about new ideas. Now, I'm always collecting these ideas, I'm filing them away, but I'm pretty lucky. And I feel a little sad about this right now. But usually I get to go to 40 plus events a year. Now, obviously right now, not many people are traveling and a lot of these events have been postponed. But when I'm at these events, I get to hear amazing people. And now I'm consuming more virtual content to be able to hear some of these amazing perspectives. I'm watching more TED Talks. I'm watching more video because I can. And it all is available on demand. And by doing that, I get to capture these amazing, interesting ideas about things that I never imagined and put those pieces together. And that allows me to use my curiosity. The third big tip is be fickle. And fickle is not usually a positive word, but to me, being fickle means saving an idea and moving on, not dwelling on it. Because when we're able to save ideas, we're able to make the connections over time. So I always have this notebook with me. It's sort of about the size of a passport. And I always keep it with me because I can take notes. And I use a technique called note boxes, where I index my notes with keywords so that I can use the keywords to find what I wrote about before. And by doing that, I make my ideas useful over time, which is a big challenge for many of us, because a lot of times we'll write down something on a piece of paper and then we'll lose it. And that's not really making our ideas valuable over time. The fourth big tip is be elegant. Be elegant. And to me, that's all about choosing words very intentionally. So I spent a lot of time studying literature and poetry. I'm an English major, so maybe this is clouding my judgment a little bit, but I believe in the power of words and unusual words as well. And so the books that you're seeing here are some of the most interesting books that I have found to help me pick more interesting words, to pick better words, to pick words that are different from what everyone else might use. And so if you're writing an email subject line, or if you're just trying to be a little bit more memorable in what you say, these books are some of the resources that can help. Now, very often what I'm doing when I'm putting all these pieces together is I'm trying to find these interesting ideas. I'm naming them. I'm being curious about different things. And for me, the moment when it all starts to come together, it starts to look like this, where I'm aligning different themes. And I'm going to show you a video in a second that illustrates what this exact process looks like for me. But the final piece I want to talk about is being thoughtful. Being thoughtful is what all of this leads up to. It's what allows you to have those innovative ideas, what allows you to be more creative. Because being thoughtful means you took all of this input, you built these pathways, you built all these pieces together, and now you're figuring out what it means. You're figuring out an insight, an aha moment, something different, something unique, which allows you to either pivot your business, change what you do. Maybe you come up with a new creative idea for how to promote what you're trying to promote in a very shifted world. All of those things become benefits of being able to do that. So for me, this whole process leads to something. And the something that it leads to initially kind of looks like this jumble of papers and colors, but eventually the output of that is a book. And the book is something that I've done every year for the past 10 years, all about business trends. And the latest version of it, Non-Obvious Megatrends, just came out in January of this past year. And it was the last time that I'm doing it. So there's a couple of things that were interesting for me in that. The first is that this has been a 10-year project in my life. Every year I've done a new version of this book to focus on all new trends and what's changing in the world. And the reason why I did it for the last time this year is because it was kind of the 10-year mark. It was a great moment in time to look backwards over how the world's changed and how it will continue to change. And as we all know now, the world changes fast. And we can't necessarily predict everything that's going to happen. What we can do is get our mindset ready to embrace that change and to be able to roll with it and to be able to do different things. So every year, like I said, there's many different trends. But what I promised you was an inside look at what this process looks like for me, this process that I call my haystack method. The haystack method, because it's an analogy based on this idea that we're always looking for a needle in a haystack. And to me, if you spend more time gathering the hay and putting all of the ideas together, you can then take the needle and stick it in the middle, and it's much more empowering. So let's take a look at how this video illustrates that. So what you're seeing right now is a time lapse of my process. And the process involves, as I said, pulling lots of different stories, lots of different ideas from various places. And right now what you see me doing is pulling these ideas into themes. And each theme brings together lots of different ideas and pulls those pieces together and says, this is what the theme fits together for. So each one of these themes is blocked out, it's stapled together, and eventually it ladders up to what I call a trend. And a trend is this curated observation of what it all means, which then goes into a chapter outline in the book, which then turns into the overarching book. So that's the process that I typically use to put together this book every year. But one of the things that was interesting was I had a team of journalists come and interview me about this process and say, look, we want to visualize what this looks like. And we want to show people what that process might be. Well, we want to do it in a fun and interesting way. So I said, okay, I'm game for it. And so they put together this photo shoot, and the photo that came from that shoot kind of became a defining thing. It was this, which is a real life version of me wearing Post-it notes. So this is not a photoshopped image. This is me actually going through that process of getting all these Post-it notes stuck on me. And the idea behind it, and the reason why we did it, was because we wanted to bring to life the sense that there's a lot of noise out there. But if you know how to navigate it, if you know how to pay attention to what really matters, then you can find those pieces and put those stories together into something that's meaningful. So once again, we talked about these 5 habits of being a trend curator. Be observant, be curious, be fickle, be thoughtful, and be elegant. These are all of the big pieces that are required in order to be able to see what other people don't see. So the last thing I want to give you is a place to start. So this is another photo from that photo shoot. But it illustrates that we got to have a starting point, right? We have to have a way of doing it. So this video is a first step because it gives you some of the techniques, it gives you some of the habits. But I want to give you a couple of other resources as well. So what you'll find on this particular URL is a free copy of a new book that's all about how to be more innovative and how to work remotely and benefit from doing that. It's available entirely for free, and it's going to be online, so you can pick that up. But the other thing is every Thursday I publish an email that has the most interesting and non-obvious stories of the week. And I spend hours digging through hundreds of different stories to put together this email with the 6 or 7 that I think are most interesting every week. So it'd be great if you could spend all of this time navigating and figuring out those stories for yourself. If you find yourself time-strapped or you're just interested in seeing what I spotlight every week, you could also sign up to get that email every Thursday morning and learn about the most interesting non-obvious ideas. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for thinking about and listening to some ideas on how to be more innovative when you're working remotely. You can do it. You can be more creative. You can be more innovative. And I think that now, hopefully, you have the tools to do it. Thank you.